Good evening, folks, and welcome to the March meeting for Florence School District 5 Board of Trustees. If you would, join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Gold, we missed you last month.
Thank you.
You got something for us?
Sure, absolutely. If you will, let us pray. Father God, we just thank you tonight that we can come together as a school board, as school officials, as community. God, that we can do your work. God, we just pray tonight that you'll give us wisdom and knowledge and understanding. God, to make the decisions that need to be made for Florence School District 5. God, we thank you for the opportunity to be able to work together, to work for our students, to work for our parents, to work for our families, and to work for our community. Help us, God, lead us, God, and guide us. And we ask for all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Confirmation of notice to media in accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws 1976, Section 30-40-80E as amended. The following were notified of this meeting: Morning News, Post and Carrier, WBTW, WMBF, WPDE.TV, and on our website, www.fsd.org. We'll now go to approval of agenda. If everybody had a chance to. Good to go? All right. Public forum. Have anybody signed up for public forum? Okay, so we'll move right into our consent agenda, which was sent to us. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes, monthly financial statements, food services. Questions, concerns?
Yeah, I did have a question.
Okay.
The food service, it's like we had 2 months. Was it, December and February, where expenses were a good bit more than our revenues. Was there a reason?
Yes. In the month of December, we only have so many student days, but yet salary continues. They get paid equal amounts each time.
Okay.
So it would be a short month. And then in February, he started to spend some of that money, and we got the invoices in for some of that stuff that he's doing to get the fund balance out.
I wondered if it had to do with some of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Anybody else? Good to go? Okay. We'll move right into our regular agenda with the superintendent report.
Okay, we'll begin tonight with academics. Mr. Gold.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Got a lot of stuff going on in academics in Florence School District 5. We're at a time of the year where you've heard us say that our foot is on the gas. We are pedal forward, trying to get to state testing. So a lot of different things going on. Some things I want to highlight is different author visits. JES had authors come during Read Across America Week to talk to students, to talk about their books, to read, to encourage reading. We've had students doing projects in their classes. You see some of those pictures. Some great learning going on. Ms. Burrows and I doing learning walks the past 2 months. Just seeing a lot of great things going on in the classrooms, a lot of real life application, and a lot of just things helping our students be prepared. Also, as you see in the corner at JES and at JMS, our students continuing their learning paths for iReady, really pushing our students to focus and to work on those learning paths, work on those gaps that they know that they need to close. Also, some things I want to highlight for JMS. If you notice, some of our students utilizing the virtual VR labs. They were learning about algebra properties. They were learning about cellular biology. Just doing a lot of different things as we work with the virtual learning with those headsets that I talked to you about a few months ago that we got through that grant. So there are students now, we've got them in place. Students are putting those to work, and I do want to give a big shout out to Coach Harris Avant and Miss Stacy Sumter for supervising those students and the after school clubs for those. Also, at JMS, we've had some different visitors come in and had some real life visitors come in. And when I say real life application, come in. We had Miss Connie from DHEC come in and talk with our 5th grade students about protecting our environment. And goes along with the science standards for 5th grade. So involving our community, bringing real life application to our students, and we're just proud of the things going on there. Speaking of real life application, in collaboration with the operations department and Snyder Electric, we had some of our high school students. They partnered with Snyder Electric for our energy fellowship programs, where our students were involved with assisting the district in our upcoming efficiency and infrastructure. And these students work with engineers and marketing teams to provide information on how we can make our district more efficient, but also created a marketing presentation campaign on why flashes need a jumbotron. And so those groups of students, they presented their marketing campaign to a group of district staff. They did a wonderful job. All of them did a wonderful job. Each one of them had key pieces that we want to utilize for our district and our campaign for the jumbotron. So thanks to the operations department for partnering with the academics department, and a big thanks to Snyder Electric for allowing our students to participate in some real life learning. So a lot of things going on in academics. There are a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't really have pictures of, but teachers, administrators, district staff, we've been collecting and analyzing observation data, test data, tracking standards to determine what we've covered so far and what we still need to cover and how we're going to cover that in the time left before state testing. Because believe it or not, probably almost a month, less than a month away almost, and we will be starting either a field test or a real state test. It is amazing how fast this year has flown. But speaking of testing, there we go. We will begin our formative assessments in the month of April. At the elementary school for 3rd and 4th grade on April 9th and April 10th, we'll be doing our iReady diagnostic test. We're doing those a little bit early because we want to get that data back, because those are 2 tested grade levels, and we want to see kind of what standards we have not mastered yet, so that we can continue to work on that. And that gives us a little bit of information and projections on where we're at before state testing and what we still need to do. And then later in April and in May, our lower grade levels, K, 1st, and 2nd, will also be doing iReady to see where those students are at. At the middle school, they'll be doing iReady on April 16th and 17th. That will also be able to give them information before state testing to know what standards we've covered, what standards we need to still work on, and what we can do before we do our state testing. Which, if you look at the next slide, once April kind of hits mid to late April, you see all the testing that our district will be doing. We will be testing from April through May. We have wind testing. That is for our high school students, 11th grade. That is a test that they take to help determine college and career ready. They have been preparing for that through their advisory time, and our 11th graders will be taking that test on April 17th. This year we have 2 field tests. Those 2 field tests are, one, the writing field test for English 2. That's the field test for the new standards that will be coming next year. And then also in grades 4 and 6, there's a science field test. This year was the first year of our new science standards. So instead of a test that will count for accountability purposes, they'll be using that test to make sure that the standards and the test items that they've created kind of correlate. So those won't be used for accountability purposes, but that will be used to give the state feedback on the new standards and on the questions they pick for those. Then once you get into May, you see where we have the true, what we call SC ready. Those are the real tests, so to speak, because they're not field tests. These are the ones that count for accountability purposes. So we'll be doing that basically starting May 1st and going all the way through about May 8th, May 7th, May 8th. And then a little bit later in the month of May, that is when the high school EOC test will start for English 2, for Algebra 1, for Biology 1, and for U.S. History. And then after that, the last part of May, we'll be doing makeup. And then, of course, at the very end of the year, our JHS students will be taking their final exam. So a lot of testing coming up. As I said, right now in academics, it's just kind of the grind right now of going through, finding out where we're at, finding out where we need to be, finding out what holes we need to close and what gaps we need to close, and just teachers working hard right now. Ms. Squires, Mr. Fleming, Ms. Burrows, myself, we've been doing walkthroughs. Our teachers are working hard. Our students are working hard. They're doing their best and doing everything they can to make sure that our students are prepared for the state test coming up. Any questions for academics this month?
Do we know what the new standards are going to look like?
Absolutely, yes ma'am. We actually have had teachers in training since probably back in October for ELA that they have been doing train the trainer. They've been trained on the standards and now they're coming back into the schools and doing training. And Miss Robin Tanner has already been doing PLCs on the new standards at the elementary and middle school, and Miss Ruderman has been working with some of the high school teachers. She was trained on those new standards there, and they'll continue to be training throughout the rest of this year and into next year for those.
Is it just ELA?
Just ELA for the new ones next year, yes ma'am.
When are they gonna change the math?
The math, that's a great question. They are actually, the release of those standards have been released. They're actually on the state website that you can see those new standards. They'll begin training for those starting late this summer, early next fall, because those will go into effect not next year, but the next year. Yes, ma'am. And I think our last month's board meeting, we have adopted our ELA curriculum, K through 12, which was the HMH. So those materials can be ordered starting April 8th. So we'll begin to order those when the window opens then, and our teachers will be getting that before the end of the year, beginning to work with those materials and resources so that they're familiar with them. Also, kind of speaking of ELA, for our elementary school, they did their second round of letters training this past March 15th, I believe. And so that is a part of those foundational ELA standards, new ELA standards required by the state. And so they're doing a really good job. They finished Unit 1 about March 12th. They did the preliminary for Unit 2 on March 15th, and they'll continue to do that through the rest of this school year also to finish up Unit 2. So they're working hard. A lot of PD right now for the next few years. We're going to have a lot of PD in ELA, a lot of PD in math. So a lot of new standards. Those new standards will probably last for the next 7 to 10 years. We probably will not have any more math or ELA standards for the next 7 years. So that's kind of where we'll be for the next generation of the current students in our schools.
So I'm gonna ask an obvious question.
All right.
Is the new standards, does it trend more towards the Common Core or less towards the Common Core? Cause it seems like our current standards, they have a lot of Common Core
Yes.
stuff in it.
So with these standards, there's some similarities to the old standards. There's actually a crosswalk that you can go through and look at and see the different ones. One thing that has happened with the new standards, they have taken the standards and they have broken them down to where I feel they are more user-friendly. Some of the standards you read and you're like, what in the world are they talking about? But these standards specifically state what they're wanting teachers and students to do, which was a little different than the Common Core. So I believe that they've kind of taken them. One thing they've also done is reduce the number of standards that they've had so that a lot of different standards that you had and you said, well, goodness, it seems like these repeat over and over. They've taken them and they've basically said from K through 12, here's a overlying standard we want students to do, and now for each grade level, here's what we want each one of those to do for that grade level. So if I had to give my professional opinion, they are moving away a little bit from the Common Core standards and having more of genuine South Carolina state standards that were developed by a group of teachers, administrators, and State Department officials at the State Department. Now, for math, I'll be honest, math is fixing to change the way we have looked at math completely different than it's ever been before. And when I say that, it's not a Common Core thing, it's a track to where we're used to Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. That is changing completely. When that happens, you'll actually now take Geometry first, and then you'll take Algebra 1, and then from there it branches off into different maths. Algebra 2, the state is creating 2 new math courses. And then you'll still have your pre-calc and actually you won't have your problem statistics because they'll be in your geometry and algebra 2 classes. So math will look a lot different. It will look a lot different. The goal for that is in the geometry. Geometry is moving more from an algebra-based geometry to a geometry that is more what I call geometry-based, to where you can do it without algebra, but in that same course, they were beginning to build in some algebra before the students actually take algebra, which hopefully will help our students with EOC and Algebra 1. The thing that will be going away though is right now we have foundations in intermediate that have helped some of our at-risk students. The state is doing away with those 2 courses. So that's one thing that is going to be a big change, especially for our students who typically have not done well in math. We're going to really have to focus on what are we going to do for our students to make sure that the ones that struggle with math, how we can make sure they're prepared for Algebra 1, because they will not have that foundations in the intermediate to help them kind of break it up and take it over 2 semesters versus 1. So we're in the planning stages of what that might look like at the high school coming from there. Other questions? Thank you so much for your time this evening. And we'll turn it over to Ms. Wanda Willis.
Okay, a couple of things we want to start, just to let you know about before we start with the budget for next year. We had a meeting at Florence County, where the South Carolina Department of Revenue came down. They talked to us about reassessment. We are in a reassessment year this year. So that means that all property values are being reevaluated, and then, so therefore, they're more than likely going to go up. Based on what Mr. Floyd has told us from just looking at Florence 5, the values have increased pretty significantly, so it's gonna be a plus for us in that. However, the way that we put on millage is we have to do a formula that's based on the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, and it's offset by the population in our specific tax area. The CPI for the state is 4.12, but our population decreased in our area 2.85. So if you have a negative population, they deem that a 0. So we'll be capped at a millage cap that we can do for like maintenance of effort at a 4.12. We will get those figures probably the end of May, he said. That's being hopeful. It might even be June. So it may have an impact on next year's budget, but we won't know until a little bit further down the road. Okay, I wanted to show you a few things about our tax collections. In order to evaluate exactly how they're coming in and what we're projecting, I went back 2 years. So I went back to 21-22 and to 22-23. And I looked at how much tax dollars we actually collected. I didn't include this year, although it's even up more than the 22-23, just to see a trend. How's it going? You make sure everything's in line with what it should be. Our tax revenue has been steadily increasing, which is good. So in this particular budget, we used a 96%, which is kind of conservative for what we do with our budget, based on the 22-23 year to give us a projection for what we're using in the budget for next school year. We're still gonna have some cushion in there, even with that number, but it does kind of lets you show where we are with tax dollars and kind of how we're monitoring that and using that to plug into the budget that we're proposing. Okay, at each of your place, we gave you a first reading of the proposed general fund budget. We're going from a 12 point, and I don't have that number in front of me, but I think it's a 12.4 That's okay. It's a 12.4 something, 408.7 something. To a 13.357 budget. The reason, these are the changes to the revenues. If you will notice on every board report that you've gotten this year, our interest is coming in at an alarming rate above and beyond what we projected, which is very positive. So we used a portion of that and plugged it into the budget. Tier 3 is the money that we get from the state. Instead of operating millage being placed on owner occupied homes, this is the 1% sales tax that passed with Act 188, with Act 388, that reimburses us for what would have been collected. That estimate, we have no say-so in that, it comes to us straight from the state, is increasing by $108,000 for next school year. The budget that the House Ways and Means have given us estimates that we will receive an additional $487,000. And then based on the property tax trend, we increased the budget $222,000. So those things are the only things that are different from the current budget that we're in right now and to the budget that we're going forward. And let me just mention, we had a new funding formula that started somewhat year before last, and then it was actually all of this year. In that funding formula from the state, we actually received more funding. Because of the way that it's based, it's not based on base student cost anymore, but so much of your index of tax paying ability plugs into that. So for our district, the new formula that they use to allocate funds actually is a positive for us. We've actually done very well. Not so much for some of the other bigger districts, but for the smaller districts, it's really helped. There are a few things to bring out that we've got plugged into this budget, and keep in mind, this is first reading. When I get the Senate version, we'll have to make it to that, and then when I get the final, we'll have to redo it again to get to that figure. They are estimating, and I think this is a little bit high, but they are estimating that employer health contributions is going to increase 13%. That means for 6 months, because they're on a calendar year, for 6 months, I have to budget 13% higher than I did for the first 6 to get us to December. So that has been figured into this. We have been able to look at the non-certified personnel, and this is something that has been very, very important, and we've just not gotten to a point where we could do anything with it. But we wanted to do something for our non-certified personnel. So they'll be getting a step increase, and what amounts to around a 5% raise. When you're looking at very low salaries and you just give them a 2, you're only looking at a couple of $100s in some cases. We've looked at this, we've looked at the sustainability of this, and this is long overdue. This really needs to happen. In addition, with the state minimum salary schedule for teachers, they've increased all of the years' experience from 23 to now there's steps all the way up to 28. So before you maxed out at 23, now there's small steps going forward. They added funds to each teacher salary schedule cell in varied amounts, as we looked at last week. It was like all over the board. The majority of the money is being injected into the bachelor category for the new employees coming into teaching as an incentive. But overall, the big winners on this are bachelor level. The higher you go up the scale, you are getting a raise, but it's not as significant. Bus drivers, we don't have any say-so over. That is dictated to us by the state. They will be receiving a 1.5% increase. Retirement's going up 1%. And there was a good bit of expenditures that we were able to move into ESER that we've had to look at. We were able to do a few things where we were able to extend a few of our software licenses to cover 2 years. And so it gets us through another year. So we've absorbed the things that we need to absorb. And one of the things is there were several intervention positions that we didn't really have, that came in knowing it was temporary, and that's where they knew that that was going to end, but we want to be as mindful as we can be about those individuals. So one of the things in speaking with the principals and especially the secretaries, we do not have subs. We are having teachers who are doubling up every day, using their planning period to cover other teachers' classes, because we do not have subs to put in there. We have tried everything that we can think of to advertising constantly. One of the things that's hindered us is all of our really good subs, we hired them as interventionists. So now you don't have quite that pool. So we looked at the amount that we had budgeted for subs, and in order to help the schools out, it is just as cost effective to have a permanent sub assigned to each location, where they report every day. That secretary puts them wherever they are needed, and sometimes it may still end up that they have to double up, and if they can't get other subs and in at that point, but it doesn't cost the district any more to do that than it would to pay sub salaries. So we have created one position at each location to assist with this at the schools. If something happens and that sub is not needed at one school one particular day, they may go to another school that needs a sub there. I don't know that we've ever had many days where we've had no subs. 3 days all year long that we've had no subs at the elementary school. So it's challenging, and this would be very helpful in several ways with helping things to flow more smoothly in the classroom. Okay, this is just to let you know kind of how our budget goes. Mr. Goins likes to use these pivot tables, and I was like, well, he can't get past me on these pivot tables. So, if you will notice the blue and the orange, that's employee salaries and employee benefits. It makes up 89% of our budget. So about the only way that you're going to affect the budget is through personnel changes. Because your electricity and your water and your supplies and your custodial things that you have to have just to make the school run, this is a very minute part of our budget. So just keep in mind as we're going forward, hopefully the Senate's not going to be much off. I've not seen, and we read it daily, there's not a lot of things out there, but there are a few things that we need to consider. And we've been monitoring this very closely, there is a proposed law out there that we have to increase physical education requirements based on the number of minutes per day or minutes per week for everyone in K through 8. So we've been trying to figure out how can we make this happen. You only have so many minutes in a day. How can we increase? And Mr. Goins can tell us how much.
Yeah, it's an hour and 30 minutes a week in elementary for physical education, true physical education, and then another 20 minutes per day for recess, mandatory recess, that every kid gets 20 minutes a day for recess. At the middle school level for 6 through 8, it is 60 hours a year that kids must be physical education, not health, not anything else, but actual physical education, PE. 60 hours a year, and then also 6 through 8, every kid is supposed to get a mandatory at least 20 minutes of recess a day.
So it's going to be challenging if that law passes, and it is gaining momentum.
Yes.
It's very likely that it will. In that case, we will have to go back to the drawing board and look and see what we're going to have to do to make that happen. There are 2 grants that we are awaiting an answer on. We have reapplied for the EDA grant. And then Mr. Goins has also applied for an interventionist grant, which will help us to keep the tutors there for the at-risk students. It may be a little bit further into June before we know. As the ones of you that have been on the board for a while, this is early. So we'll keep you posted as we go forward. Are there any questions about what we're proposing for the first reading?
The only question I had was in regards to, go back a couple of slides. Keep going, all right.
There?
Yeah, the experience on all salary schedules increased. You were talking about a lot of that money got injected into the bachelor's.
Okay, for the teachers,
Yeah.
on the teachers', salary schedule, it may look like in the media that they are injecting $4,500, but most of that $4,500 per level of experience is being injected into the bachelor's line. They are injecting that money. It's just that percentage-wise, they are going mostly from masters to bachelors is where most of the money is being injected. The losers in this particular version are the higher degreed individuals. On top, we don't control, we don't control that. It may be that, as I mentioned last time, we might need to look at like local supplement issues and maybe rearrange something for that so that we're not, we certainly don't want to discourage our teachers from getting higher degrees and going back to school.
Well, and I was just thinking about that, so, typically your higher degree people have been around longer.
Yes.
So our more experienced people are not getting as much
That is correct.
extra.
That is correct.
On one hand, it's good because you're able to offer some new teachers a little extra money, but on the other hand, our experienced teachers that have got 20, 25 years
Very correct.
might look to.
Yes. That's one of the things that we have say-so over what we do with our local supplement amounts. That could be something that we'll come back to you with once we get a finalized, stamp of what's gonna actually happen with that. But yes, that is very much true statement.
I think it's trying to get that starting salary up to 50.
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
Yeah.
In every workplace, you have people that have had 20, 25, 30 years in, and they've hit a certain salary, and then you got a new person comes in, and their starting salary is 90% or 80% of what this person's worked for a long time.
Yeah, we do differentiate with the local supplement. From 0 to 17 years, they get $14.50. From 18 to 24, they get $18.50, and then from 25 plus, they get $22.50. And they get that check in December as they chose. That's how our faculty wanted to do that. So it may be something that we need to look at going forward. Yeah, very much so.
Y'all have a breakdown on our employees and what stage they're at?
I can give you that. Yes, not a problem.
I
It would be interesting to look at. Yes.
was gonna say, I'd like to see how many people it helps and how many people it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
maybe put a burr in their side.
Yep, we can certainly have that as part of our presentation next month. Any other questions? Ms. King.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
I don't have nearly as interesting stuff to talk about as they did. We'll start with technology. The replacement laptops that I've talked to you about last month have arrived. New interactive panels are going to be replaced in the classrooms at JES over the break. That's kind of what they look like there. They're an 86-inch Samsung interactive panel. It's a pretty nice upgrade, and we will be getting professional development from Samsung, so all those teachers know all the ins and outs of the boards. They do a lot more cool stuff than the old ones. They integrate into their OneDrive, so it's easier for them to pull material onto the board to do lessons and all that, so I think the teachers will really like those. Facilities update, our facilities planning team met last Thursday. The baseball fencing is nearing completion. If y'all rode by there, you can kind of see that. Storage buildings for baseball and JMS are complete. We are looking to issue an RFP for the track resurfacing. We've gotten some preliminary numbers. So we hope to get that ball rolling here soon as well. And Wednesday, Snyder Electric is coming to give us the official proposal on the athletic lighting, as well as some other energy savings recommendations that they have, so that we can start doing those projects to save money and put that money back in the general fund. Safety and security. So the grants that I've been talking to y'all about and we've all been impatiently waiting on, we finally have gotten the money for both of those. Purchase orders have already been issued for the door lock replacements at all of the schools with the Department of Education Safer schools grant, 6 to 8 weeks, is when I hope to have that in full swing. Purchase order has also been issued for PA system replacements for JES and JMS. The bottom right-hand corner of that picture there, that's the clocks that we already have at the high school. It'll say tornado, take cover if we have an emergency event or whatever, but usually they just have the time on there. That's also a speaker with flashers on the side, so that's the new PA system. And all 3 schools will now be on the same system. Me and Paul have received training on that. It's fairly easy to manage, so that will also cut a lot of the expensive service calls we're paying now on the older systems that we have. The picture there on the left is the door locks that we are replacing on all the classrooms and a lot of the staff areas as well. The black part on that is a card reader, so the teachers will no longer need keys. They'll have their card will get them where they need to go. That will get us standardized. There'll now only be 3 keys, 1 for each school in the entire district. So I've got a wad of keys right now for this entire district, and it'll be nice to be able to cut all that down. We're all, the high school especially, Mr. Fleming can tell you, he's got like 15 keys for his building. Quotes are being finalized to begin the projects with the COPS grant. The reason that's going a little slower, those quotes were done a year ago. And as you know, everything's gotten more expensive, so they're having to redo quotes. We're having to tweak some things a little bit, but I look to start getting some of those projects rolling here in the next month or so as well. The summer, it's gonna be a very, very busy time for us on the operations side of the house. Any questions on any of that?
I have 2.
Okay.
Locks, what manufacturer are they?
Schlage,
Okay,
they are Schlage NDE. I can send you
now,
the information.
flag is good enough.
Yeah, Schlage locks, and those being installed by A3 Communications.
Alright, second question. The field track resurfacing, is that project including a storage building for them?
We are looking to do a storage building with them. The RFP will not include the storage building. There'll be an RFP just for the
Resurfacing?
track itself, and then a separate RFP for the building if we have to, depending on cost.
Well, I think we had told them they could have storage building, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when we were supposed to get that mobile unit and that kind of fell through. They hadn't got a storage building yet, and their mats are now more worn out than they were then, so we really need to put some money in the track.
Yeah, we're holding off on the building just because I don't wanna put a building up and then it be in the way for them to resurface. And we're not exactly sure if they're gonna have to shift the track or anything, so we kinda wanted to get that done before we go throwing a building up, but you are correct, we are overdue for that. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
I'm not gonna repeat what Mr. Cohen's already did, but, the JMS Academic Challenge Team placed 3rd in the regional tournament at Francis Marion University. He's already walked you through the Energy Fellowship Program through Snyder Electric. Upcoming events, March 29th is JHS Prom, then we have spring break coming up the 2nd through the 5th. Our Special Olympics will be held on April the 12th. We have our JES parent event on April the 19th, Movies with Mom and Dancing with Dads. April 20th, and again on April 21st, we have our production of Annie the Musical at Johnsonville Middle School. JES will have an author visit on April the 23rd, and that evening we'll have our JMS choir concert. I didn't put all of the athletic events on there because there is so many and you wouldn't be able to read it from here. So if you look at that spring sports schedule, you'll see all that we have going on with our athletics. Any additional questions?
I'd like to invite y'all out to the track meet tomorrow night at Carter's Bay. If you all have not been out to see one, come out and support the track team.
I got one question, because I have to go to all the games everywhere. And we're getting hit when we get to the gate and we pay the $8 or the $7 there. They are still saying, why do we have to pay $10 to come to y'all when y'all have to pay us but $8? Is that ever gonna change?
That's what our region agreed to.
And we're the only one doing it? Okay.
Or look,
'Cause that-
around here, I think.
Yeah. Even at Timberland and at Manning, we got to the gate and got the same response when we said, how much? And it was 5 of us at $8. And they said, don't even say anything when we come to y'all. It's more than that.
That's something we can look at with the regional ADs.
Well, we talked about it in the new region. I think majority of them are $7, $8. We're still at 10, and when we get online, when you do online, it's still gonna be about $10 doing it that way. So it was just easier for us just to do that option. So when they do online, they're still paying more than $7, $8. Now some of them agreed to do with the new region to do cash, but it's still 7, 8, and we're still 10. But we don't have the funding as they do. And so with the officials, with the rise, they're probably gonna end up going up because it's costing a whole lot more for officials now going into next year. So they're gonna be bumping up a little bit, I can promise you that.
We
I just
also had
wish
an
they would
increase.
make it the same for all of our regions, so we don't get hit with cost more to come to Johnsonville than it does to Carver's Bay.
We
Type
could,
thing.
I mean, we could go down, but it's gonna really hurt us.
No, see if they can go up.
Yeah, we don't need to go down, yes ma'am. So they're gonna end up going up because officials, it's going up and the cost of everything is going up. So we're right where we need to be, but they're gonna come up.
Oh, okay.
The rate for our security from the off-duty deputies also increased this year, and it possibly will increase again next year, and that comes out of gate money as
Right.
well.
Okay, that concludes superintendent's report.
Okay. Thank you all for your hard work that you always do for us. We'll go straight into our 4 action agenda and, first reading of the proposed general fund budget.
I make a motion that we approve the first reading of the proposed general fund budget.
My second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor, aye? We'll move right to the first reading of the following policies. The first is a revision of JICJ, which is the possession or use of electronic communication devices in school.
And if you look at that policy, basically what is changed is the, use of cell phones we took out without principal approval. So they are not allowed to use cell phones in schools. So that's all you'll see pretty much there in different areas, where it gives them permission, but we're saying cell phones aren't allowed to be used in schools.
And this applies to all 3 of the schools.
Applies to all 3.
I even saw it on the school bus, how do you,
That'll be a little bit harder to police, but we put it on there that they shouldn't, so, hopefully we won't see recordings and they can only address what they see. I'd rather them drive the bus, but if they do use it inappropriately, at least we'll have something to support consequence.
Well, we do have the cameras on the bus too, so.
okay? Any more questions on that? I'll entertain a motion for the first reading.
I'll make a motion to accept revision to JICJ, possession and use of electronic communication devices in school.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we move to the revision of JKE, the upholstery students.
In this particular policy, we've received more information just today, actually, about where this expulsion of hearings are going. So before we do anything, we may want to see where the State Department goes with what they're requiring for expulsion hearings.
So in light of that, I'll entertain a motion to table this to our next meeting.
I'll make a motion to table this to our next meeting.
Second?
We have a motion properly second to table, the revision of JKE. Any questions? All in favor?
And if they don't have information for that by the next meeting, it can be tabled until we get more information. Okay.
Okay, we'll move to the approval of Hispanic Culture and Civilization elective.
Mr. Goins?
Yes. Ms. Kim Shelley, our world language teacher at the high school. She has come up with a world language Hispanic cultures class. It is an elective class that she would like to offer at the high school, which will also provide the high school with another elective class also. So in collaboration with Ms. Shelley, JHS Leadership and Guidance, we discussed the possibility of this class. We discussed the interest in this class, and we discussed the need for more electives at the high school, and everyone felt that this would be a good opportunity for our students to provide some of our students that may not really even need a foreign language class for graduation, but may just want to have an elective class to learn more about cultures and foreign language. To do that, it would require what's called a local board approved elective, to where the actual local school board approves students being able to gain an elective credit for this course. It is not a State Department of Education course. It is a local board approved course. So we reach out to you tonight to consider approving this. It would only count as an elective credit. It is not for a foreign language credit. It is just for an elective credit for our students at JHS.
Reading over this today, would these students who take this elective, would they have to have had Spanish before that?
There's no prerequisite, and again, it would not per se provide them a prerequisite for a foreign language class. It is completely elective based, just general information based elective.
Mr. Goins, you had mentioned that there was a lot of interest in this. The interest, was that from Hispanic or non-Hispanic?
And I'm assuming, based on Ms. Kim Shelley said the interest, I'm assuming probably both, so to speak, yes, from both Hispanic and non-Hispanic.
Okay.
I will say that the areas in this class, it really reminds me of Western civilization that I took in college. And I really did learn a lot of things in that class.
Based on the items that they were talking, we also could have technically went, instead of a local board approved foreign language, we could have actually probably even made it a local board approved history elective. Again, it would still be just an elective class, but doing the foreign language allows Ms. Kim Shelley to teach it with her certification. But you are exactly correct, yes.
Okay. Ready? Yeah, we're ready.
I make a motion that we approve the Hispanic Culture and Civilization elective.
I'll second.
And a motion, a second. Any more questions? All in favor? Okay, and we'll go to overnight field trip.
And we do not have any.
Yeah,
Particular time. We don't have any.
I was wondering where that was in my packet.
All right, that's all of our for action. I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session.
I'll make a motion to move to executive session.
Second.
Second.
I'll entertain a motion, to come out of executive session.
I make a motion, we exit executive session.
I second.
Everybody's good with that? Okay. Certified contract recommendations.
I make a motion to accept the certified contract recommendations.
I second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Personnel recommendations for hire.
I make a recommendation, we accept the personnel recommendations for hire.
I second.
Any all in favor?
Aye.
No action on property contract. So with that being it, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.